Your data's safe with me. Trust. Won't you be my desk buddy? And Stanford now issuing directorates of data leakage. These stories and much more in today's episode of MSP Dispatch.
This episode is presented by MSP GeekCon 2023, a conference for MSPs by MSPs. Occurring May 21st through the 23rd, 2023 in Orlando, Florida, this two-day event is built around the journey of technical growth from Tier 1 to Tier 3. Visit mspgeekcon.com for more information.
Good morning and welcome to the February 28th episode of MSP Dispatch, your source for news, community events, and commentary in the MSP channel. I'm Ray Orsini, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Tony Francisco. How you doing, Tony?
Good, brother, good. You're back from Right of Boom, Dallas, Texas. You're back in Florida. Tell me, Right of Boom was fun. You're alive. You're not sick. A lot of people are getting sick.
No, I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm walking mostly. Things are good. It was a fantastic conference. Genuinely one of my favorites of the year. And it was just jam-packed with knowledge. It's one of the few conferences besides sponsoring as a vendor, I bring some of my staff to actually go and attend the sessions so they can get even smarter than me. So how about yourself, man? How you been?
Well, first off, I'd like to formally caution you with that particular strategy of making them smarter. Although there are some positives behind it, you gotta keep them down. You gotta keep them down. No, I'm just kidding. Everything's going good, man. Everything's going good. So as for me, I actually just did another podcast with Bob Coppage, a very well-respected member of the MSP community, the very community that we service every single day. So that was kind of fun. Interested to see what Bob has to say after this. What are you and I, talking about today?
I think you and I are talking about some news. Why don't we do some?
No. Let's get into the news.
In my top story in security, ethical hacker among ransomware suspects cuffed by Dutch cops. Written by Jessica Lyons Hardcastle for The Register. Dutch police have arrested 3 men, including an ethical hacker, for their involvement with a ransomware gang that extorted hundreds of thousands of euros from thousands of companies. The criminals stole sensitive data and demanded ransoms ranging from 100,000 euros to 700,000 euros in Bitcoin per victim. In some cases, although the victims paid the ransom, their private information was still sold on the dark web. The ringleader is said to have made over 2.5 million euros, or effectively 2.65 million US dollars, or 2.08 million pounds. The suspects, aged 21, and 18, were arrested in June following a joint investigation by the Dutch National Police Cybercrime Unit, Europol, and other international law enforcement agencies. The group has been charged with fraud, extortion, money laundering, and computer intrusion. Stolen data includes people's personal information such as names, addresses, phone numbers, bank account numbers, and passport data. One of the suspects reportedly works for Divid, a Dutch security organization that receives government funding. According to an anonymous source, no one can access information at Divid unless the person cooperates in an investigation. Despite the suspect's access to sensitive information, Divid claims to have no indications of data abuse. Tony, I don't know what's worse, the constant leaks and breaches that we report on a regular basis, or in times like this when it's supposedly one of the good guys, again, allegedly, nothing's been confirmed yet, but one of the good guys doing the bad stuff, because they have access to this, right? Like, what's to stop a doctor, a nurse, somebody in IT and healthcare leaking data that they have access to? I know zero trust is a thing, but they're going to come across some of the data. What's your takeaway when you hear a story like this?
Zero trust is zero trust. I mean, by definition, I think this is giving us all prescription grade paranoia. And we really have to understand that the less interaction the better. But what is that point of diminishing returns? What can we do to protect ourselves while simultaneously not siloing ourselves and omitting ourselves from the very definition of life, which is living, and living naturally. But what is the cost of living? I think that's the concern with all of the fraud and crime and potential hostage scenario with ransomware occurring at every single entrance and opening and corner. What is the right decision? I don't know that. Ray, help me unpack this. I feel like I go straight from this show straight to my PTSD therapy. So
ironically, your dosage goes up after every episode.
Every episode.
And I feel the same way. I mean, now imagine how I feel coming from Right at Boom, where it's 100% security. And, you're listening to John Strand, you're listening to John Hammond, you're listening to all these brilliant people in the space talk about how we're so foobarred, and how to protect, but also we're foobarred. No, I mean, one would imagine, and I'm guessing here, but one would imagine that at a security research company, they would do a healthy amount of background checking. But at the same time, there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of temptation because you have access to the cookie jar. Even if they're saying Divid only lets you have access to the cases you are working on at the moment, right? And we had this at the police department. Any tags we ran, any people we ran, it was tied to us. They knew we ran it, when we ran it. We had to have a good reason for running it, and it was checked on regularly. Like, we were audited. Hey, 6 months ago you did this. What was it in relation to? And it better have been tied to a legal activity. And so even with that, I mean, there's bad cops out there. I mean, there's bad hackers out there. Unfortunately, it's shared skill sets that you can either go down the white hat or the white hat or the black hat path. I don't know what the answer is. I think this is, as much as I hate to say it, as much as I love to get on here and say these things were preventable, I have to say this is probably one of the few where I'd say it just sucks. It's just part of life. Things like this are going to happen every once in a while. I don't know. Is that there is always it's that data, that leakage, right, on your P&L that, despite your best efforts and change management and automated processes and good auditing, there's still a few dollars in there every year that's just a little bit of leakage because you didn't catch it. And this to me feels a lot like insecurity. As much as I hate to say it, feels like that leakage. Am I off? Am I being too forgiving here?
I listen. Good security is like good hygiene. You can ignore it if you want, but don't be surprised what happens and the opinions that people will draw based on your practices. And that's after the unfortunate occurrence. I'd love to hear from others on things that they've been absolutely certain that they would not be hacked by, or hacked or ransomware or attacked or in any potential scam, the leakage that you referred to. I'd love to hear like this happened out of nowhere. We did everything we could to tighten all the joints, but alas. Anyway, I could go on and on about this.
Tony, I got a great idea. To monitor each other, why don't we become desk buddies?
No. Okay, I guess if we work at Google, that has to happen. In my first story from arstechnica.com, Google has gotten so cheap, employees have to share desks. Google's offices were once famous for being amazing, with giant playground slides, 24/7 staff masseuses, and a huge selection of free food, even complimentary laundry service. Today, in the new cost-cutting era of Google, some employees don't even get their own desks. CNBC's Jennifer Elias obtained an internal document from Google's cloud division that declares, quote, most Googlers will now share a desk with another Googler. After the pandemic and the work from home trend, Google wants employees to visit the office twice a week on a hybrid work policy. Employees involved in this measure are instructed on how they will or will not decorate their space, store personal items, and tidiness expectations. Google has been on a cost-cutting tear lately. Last month, it fired 12,000 employees, the largest exodus from a company that was previously immune to the big tech layoffs. In the past 7 months or so, Google has killed Google Stadia, the Pixel laptop division, Project Loon, and most recently, a robot division called Everyday Robots. It also cut Area 120 in half, merged Waze with Google Maps, and in another round of layoffs, cut 15% of the staff of Alphabet health company Verily, and nearly 20% of the Alphabet robotics company Intrinsic. Ray, I have so many mixed thoughts on this. Some would say, oh, they're so cheap, you don't even get your own desktop. Some would call that hoteling, where you just jump from desktop to desktop to desktop, especially in this hybrid work from home scenario. Personally, I'm okay with that. What are your thoughts? Are they overreacting? Am I not reacting enough? Give me your thoughts.
So some of the feedback I got from last week's episodes was that they really liked having an MSP on, having somebody that has been in the trenches. I think you and I are maybe the wrong ones to weigh in on this story, for the simple reason that, and yes, I'm the one that picked the story, so I get the ridiculousness there, but we're both owners. We're both looking at it from, if it's not going to be in use 24/7, let's make use of the resources we have. And if we were Google, we would absolutely be looking at cutting back on real estate costs, cutting back on operating costs, and making sure they still have a safe place to work. And when I read through the article, it made sense. They were saying leaving it to the supervisors to coordinate with the employees, making sure they had an understanding of what the expectations were and how to assign things and how to use things, so that there was no loss of no loss of ability to be effective, no loss of productivity. So they're accounting for the right things. And even though I'm with you, I think this is a great idea. I think this makes a lot of sense. This is far better than those employers when work from home started saying, okay, well, now that we're going back, you have to be at work 3 days a week. You have to be at home 2 days a week. Like, if you're going to be hybrid, be real hybrid. If you want to go in, you go in. If you don't, you don't, within scheduling, of course. But I'm left with that little twinge in the back of my neck that says maybe an employee will feel differently because they don't have their personal space anymore, right? Maybe they don't have their spot to put up their kids' photos or the photos of their pets or like their awards or whatever they want to do to make it their home. They're at a loss for that. Maybe. I don't know how it's being set up. Maybe it's some space for you, some space for me. I really don't know. But I'm trying to play devil's advocate. You get what I'm saying?
You hit it on the head. The moment you said, well, from our lens, Tony, we see it as X. And as soon as you said that, I was like, damn you and your rational thinking and all that kind of stuff. You exactly taking a different perspective, whatever you want to call that. No, I think you're absolutely correct. And that's a very unfortunate. I give you a tip of the hat, sir. But I'm really struggling because I don't see another way. If you want to cut costs, and I do see when you apply a hybrid work scenario where you have to be there 2 days a week, the question is, are those 2 days scheduled? Why are there 2 days a week? Is there a benefit for people breathing the same oxygen, talking to each other? I believe there is, to a point. But I'm also of the belief that, well, you can have everyone work virtually indefinitely and be wildly productive, but you need those key point indicators that actually show who is doing what, who is present, who's engaged, and who is, frankly, and let's just be blunt, because we're hearing stories about this all the time over the last few years, people that have another job. And that makes me angry as an employer. So maybe it's to prevent that. Maybe it's to offset that. Maybe it's to get a better, more engagement of what's here localized in the office with others. I don't know what it is, but hoteling, easy way to consume and aggregate resources from multiple people. I just think it's kind of the future.
I agree with you. MSPs, tell us about all the ways you hate this, because I can only imagine. No shared logins. Here's a shared computer, which technically should not be a big deal until you consider lockout policies. And having worked in a 24/7 call center, one of the things we handed to people, I mean, we went through boxes and boxes of like it's not alcohol wipes, it's a different kind of germicide they use for like the headsets and for all, because you have all these shared surfaces. It's just all these other things to account for when you have shared spaces versus, it's like you borrow your buddy's car and then you give it back, and I guarantee your buddy's like, oh, Tony adjusted the seat here, the mirror there. It's got to be frustrating. So MSPs, tell us all the reasons you hate this, or you love this, or you're bored with the story, you want to move on to the next one. Let us know, and we'll get back to you.
It's an interesting topic that we should talk more about. Let's talk about other things like everything is safe. There's no more data breaches, right, Ray?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much more, no more data breaches, and we have so much free time. I've decided to go back and get my doctorate degree from Stanford, except in our third top story in the security section, Stanford University discloses data breach affecting PhD applicants. Oh, well, sorry, Mom. Written by Sergio Gatlan for Bleeping Computer. Stanford University has announced a data breach that occurred between December 2022 and January 2023, which impacted its economics PhD program and admission information. The breach involved files containing the personal and health information of 897 people who applied to the university's Department of Economics. The stolen information includes names, citizenships, dates of birth, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses. According to the university, the incident did not expose social security numbers and financial information. Stanford immediately blocked access to the files and found no evidence of the downloaded information being misused. In response to the incident, the university is now updating its security measures and policies relating to electronic file storage security and retraining its faculty and staff on said policies. Tony, one of my favorite parts of the story was not that this wasn't a hacker got into it. This wasn't, somebody did some social spear phishing. This was a folder, had the incorrect permissions, and was available on their public website.
Oh my God. So,
yes, I left that for you to comment on because I realize how ridiculous it is to have anywhere you're storing this data immediately accessible to a public website.
Okay, so your favorite part of the story was just the complete brazen leave the door open. My favorite part of the story was where they said this data was not misused. I take this totally massive philosophical approach where, what are you talking about? It's literally from the economics division where they know that these people are going to calculate the economics of the payment. It far outweighs all the data that's being, that's ransomware. So that's how they're like, hey, we're just going to have the audience.
You'd figure ProbStat would fall into like their area of expertise. It'd be like, you can't really say what happened after it was downloaded. So you can't say if it was misused or not.
Exactly.
The best you can say is it hasn't been misused yet.
That's
the best you can do.
But I'm sitting here going with this total philosophical, strategic, here's the reason why they chose this audience and well played. And you're like, dude, they left the door open. I just love the completely abstract ways that we're thinking. You're just like, yeah, enough of the philosophy. They left the door open, Tony. Come on.
And you know what I'm seeing? Like, and this is kind of pissing me off. The number of stories we report on these things, it seems like their go-to is to say this was retrieved or leaked or whatever, and it's not important. We didn't leak any sensitive information. Stop leaking information, period. Stop minimalizing the quality of the information leaked. Because if you leaked names, date of birth, addresses, and email, you just crafted the most beautiful, easy, that is the easy bake oven version of phishing emails.
Wait. But there's nothing's being misused yet.
Nothing's being misused. I'm sure they're going to call them up and tell them how to save 15% on car insurance. No, it's mind-boggling to me. And then on the technical side, I really hope that I'm right on the money here with all the MSPs screaming, why do these two systems have access to each other? Tony, you have a little bit of cloud hosting background. You know this. Since when do your cloud servers, especially with your public web front ends, have any direct file access. It's one thing to say, okay, it was on a shared DB. It's one thing to say, it was an internal server accessing data for whatever reason. It's a public freaking website. Why does anybody even have access to share that stuff? Forget the permissions.
Well, okay, so we'll get there in just a moment. So I think, in my opinion, and this is just as a knee jerk, just throwing noodles against the wall, seeing what sticks. I think two things happened. I don't think they left it blindly open. I think what happened is there's probably an exploitation in some capacity of the authentication server that's MFA, 2FA, whatever it may be, and that is very typically routed through your WAFs if you're using Amazon, your front end web servers, because you're consolidating all through an AD, and AD is one of several things that needs authentication. So in order to consolidate all this information, you're saying, hey, AD sync through, and it used to be through ADFS, where everyone's getting rid of that, using OAuth, you're using SAML, with all the other web services. So here's what I believe happened. This is knowing just as much about this as everyone else in the audience. Maybe they did some type of authentication, single sign-on compatible scenario, but one of the web servers that was authenticated had some type of weird, obscure access to this open file. That's kind of what I think happened. I've seen it happen before. And by the way, I'm totally giving them the benefit of the doubt, saying, yeah, it was just total accident. Please, which goes back to Ray's point. Dude, they left the door open.
I'm sorry, Phil. Can you do me a favor? Phil, can you do a graphic of a bubble over Tony and me popping his bubble? Unfortunately. And for the record, Stanford, if you're paying attention, go hire Tony to write your response next time, because that would have been so much better. But here it goes, Tony. Poop. Because here's what happened. They called out specifically in the article that it was permissions on the folder that caused the whole thing. So while everything you said could have been 100% more, and you know what would have made me feel better, because it meant all those things were in place, they let the cat out of the bag and said they put the wrong permissions on the folder. So if you're at home screaming along with me, I think the safest thing to do right now is just move on to notables, man.
Let's go on to notables. And jumping into my first notable mention from WindowsLatest.com, Microsoft will pay you if you use Edge instead of Chrome on Windows 11 and Windows 10. Microsoft has started testing new advertisements to push its Chromium-based Edge to Windows 10 and 11 users. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the tech giant has been experimenting with showing more ads when users try to switch to Google Chrome. If you're on Windows 10 or 11 and have Edge Bar, an experimental feature enabled, you'll soon see an advertisement on the desktop that pops up automatically and tells you that Edge gift cards are available. It is going without saying that Microsoft Edge is an excellent browser, but too many ads could turn users against Edge. Ads can have the opposite effect than intended and can hurt Microsoft's reputation in the long run. In my next notable mention from bleepingcomputer.com, Microsoft fixes a bug offering Windows 11 upgrades to unsupported PCs. Microsoft has addressed a known issue behind unsupported computers being offered Windows 11 22H2 upgrades and unable to complete the installation process. The issue was detected on Thursday, February 23rd, and was resolved the same day, with the bug being pushed to impacted devices over the weekend. Impacted devices include those running Windows 11 21H2, Windows 10 21H2, and Windows 10 20H2.
In my first notable mention, more layoffs at Twitter, including loyalist Esther Crawford, written by Rebecca Bellin for TechCrunch. Twitter has reportedly laid off at least 50 employees, including Esther Crawford, the CEO of Twitter Payments, and the person who oversaw Twitter Blue, the platform's verification subscription service. Crawford, previously considered a loyalist of Elon Musk, even boasted on the platform last year that she slept in the office to keep up with her new boss's demands. The layoffs came after Twitter employees discovered they had been cut off using Slack, leading to the rumors that layoffs were imminent. Since Musk's involvement with Twitter in October 2021, the company's headcount has decreased by over 70%, despite his promise in November that there would be no further layoffs. Twitter has not publicly commented on the layoffs. In my second notable, TikTok ban hits EU Commission phones as cybersecurity worries amount. Written by Nathan Eddy for Dark Reading. The European Commission, EC, and the Council of the EU have announced that its employees are banned from using TikTok on company devices, citing cybersecurity threats and actions that could be exploited for cyber attacks. The move affects thousands of employees and contract workers, and the EC has called out for the app to be deleted from private devices used for work by March 15th. The EC has not given a specific reason for the ban, but TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, has called it misguided and based on fundamental misconceptions. The ban follows similar proposed or enacted restrictions in the U.S., where lawmakers have expressed concerns over Chinese surveillance and data harvesting. And in our resource of the week, Right of Boom takeaways, posted by John Snyder NFI on Reddit. Right of Boom 2023 provided valuable insights for MSPs, and a few takeaways include the need for effective attack detection tools, understanding customers' primary business processes, and aligning with the CIS cybersecurity framework and cyber defense matrix. The link to this Reddit post will be included in the show notes below.
There are plenty of amazing upcoming events taking place across the community, so let's see what's happening this week. February 27th through March 2nd, an in-person event, NerdioCon in Cancun, Mexico. And February 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern, Creds and the Kill Chain webinar presented by SOS Alerts. And on March 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, Build It Better discussion presented by Everything MSP. And coming from the MSP Media Network this week, we have, on March 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Technical Deficit Episode 7, Solving the Top 5 CyberDrain Sysadmin CTF Challenges with Kevin Tieglar. Also on March 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, the Tech Bar Podcast Episode 53 with Paco LeBron and Rick Smith of MSP Unplugged. And on March 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern, 38 at 38, Episode 10 with Matthew F. Fox.
Hey, I'm Powerhouse Ray.
And I'm Super Cousin Danny.
And we're the hosts of
The Tech Bar.
Pull up a stool with us every other Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern for drinks, jokes, and games with your friends in the MSP channel. So how'd you like today's show? If you liked it, hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't, go and hit it 3 times. And if you want to hear more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button on the YouTubes or your favorite podcatcher. Did you know we also have a Discord where we post stories all week? You can propose your own stories and even scream about the Stanford PhD story with us. As my friend Rich Banky says, make sure to tell a friend. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at MSP Media TV. Have any questions? Email news@mspmediatv for answers on the next episode, or leave us a voicemail, 833 MSP Network. Tony, maybe we didn't walk away with our PhDs, but I definitely feel smarter for listening to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, brother. I listen, you want to get your PhD, but then you're going to an ethical hacker who's probably taking the information from the financial people who statistically will say that it's better just to give them the money than to keep the data hostage. And then at the same time, you've got, while you're dealing with all of that, you're like, whose desk am I sharing? And did they steal my data? Or is that the ethical hacker that stole my desk? I don't understand. So much is happening. So much.
I will take that back to my, I hope this doesn't get me canceled. My favorite statistical joke. All my girlfriends have always just been like the square root of -100, meaning they're solid 10s, but imaginary. So
that's funny. That was good. I like that. That's not to get you canceled. You're probably going to get some dates now. Like, hey,
I don't think my wife would like that unless she's the one posting the dates. But with that, or it might be some dudes from the Discord. Actually, you know what? Who I want to hear from? The MSPs. I heard you loud and clear last week. You want to have more MSPs on. So if you're an MSP and you want to come on the show and you have something to talk about, hit us up. 833 MSP Network or news@mspmedia.tv, or join our Discord and ping us and let's hear you out. And we'd love to have you on, hear your story. But I think that's good for today. That's all she wrote. Tony, thank you so much. And to the MSP audience, take care of yourselves and each other.
Thanks, everyone.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.
In my first notable mention, more layoffs at Twitter, and the loyalist Esther Crawford isn't spared. Written by criminal store sensitive. You'd figure I'd get it right on the second time. Tony is muted. Tony is muted. Ha 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 ha. Finally it happened. It wasn't me.
How did you pull off a Cartman, like just that? And then I'm like, ooh, who's muted? Is he saying muted? I'm not muted. I'm totally muted. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the new tech. One more time. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the tech giant has become. Hold on. Ready? One more time. Ads for the. Really? Ray's like, I go in, Tony goes out. Here we go. Hold on. Let's refresh. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the tech giant has become experimenting with showing. Okay, last time I got this one, I swear. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the tech giant has become. What is happening? Ray is pushing a button or something to make this happen. We need more outtakes. Last one. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the tech giant has begun experimenting with showing more ads and recommendations when users switch. Fuck me. God, excuse me, dolphins. Ads for Edge on Windows aren't new, but the tech giant has begun experimenting, showing more ads and recommendations when users try to switch to Google. Last time, let me read this out loud because I just copied and pasted this one. Ads can have the opposite effect when intended. This is literally a 40-minute notable mention. Here, last one. And in my next notable mention from bleepingcomputer.com, Microsoft is fixing bugs on offering. I can't even get the title. Bug offering Windows. Microsoft fixes bug. Okay. Fixes a bug.
Have announced that the ban follows similar proposed or enacted restrictions in the U.S., where lawmakers have expressed concerns about Chinese surveillance and data